Support for Down and Dirty comes from listeners like you and the Tampa Bay Times. The Pulitzer Prize winning newspaper is available around the Tampa Bay area and online at tampabay.com. Thanks to the Tampa Bay Times for their support.
All right. Good morning. This is John Dingfelder, and you're listening to Down and Dirty on WMNF 88.5. Good morning, Skip.
Hey, good morning, John.
Skip's here working the mic. We got our Irene answering the calls. And if you forgot that phone number, it's 813-239-9663 for you to call in and give us your opinion, ask us your questions, and tell us the meaning of life. Anyway, I'm glad to be back. Had a little hiatus, little family stuff going on, but we are glad to be back after about a 6-week hiatus. We've had help from Jason and some other folks who filled in, and we appreciate that greatly. So Down and Dirty, that's what we are generally, but this morning we're not. This morning we have actually a nice friendly topic about historic preservation, which frankly is an issue that's been near and dear to my heart for decades. I just think it's such an important thing for, to really make us, to preserve the past, to make us different than so many other places around the state and around the country. We have history here in Florida, and if we don't preserve it, it will be gone, and we'll just be one more strip mall and McDonald's on every street corner. But we have two fantastic guests here today. First, my good friend, Mark Proctor. Good morning, Mark.
Hey, John. Glad to be here.
How you doing?
Real good.
Well, good. Mark and I go way back. Who knows how many
really.
decades in various contexts. I was thinking about Mark, I've had a strange career, a lot of different careers, school teaching and practicing law and being in politics and this and that. And then I was thinking about Mark Proctor. And Mark, you've done a lot of different things too. I think you and I are sort of similar. We have a lot of different interests.
And we've both done real estate over the years.
That's what I was going to start off with. Mark, you were one of the top commercial real estate brokers out in Brandon, and for many, many years.
Yep. And I was at one point the president of the Tampa Association of Realtors and very involved in the real estate industry.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, went to the state and national level, very involved. You got to the point, though, then I diverted into something else.
Yeah, and I know you've helped your wife with her veterinary practice out there in Brandon. What's the name of it?
Morgan Animal Hospital.
Morgan Animal Hospital. And we give a shout out to her and all the good work she's done over the years.
Yeah, you brought your pets there before.
Yeah, and then in recent years, 15, 20 years, you've gotten into politics and specifically helping, being a consultant and helping judges get elected. And the one thing I really like about that is it's nonpartisan, and you work with. Of course, the judges come to you, and maybe they're Democrats, maybe they're Republicans, but maybe you don't care.
I don't.
Yeah, and but if they're good people and they got a good, solid history and track record, you help them get elected. And I think you've got a great track record with that.
Yeah, right now, somebody had asked me, so we figured out I've helped elect 54 judges in Hillsborough County,
Wow.
and I've lost 4 elections. So
yeah.
I've still got to make up.
Now, listen, I did get that traffic ticket the other day, so just kidding. We also have Karen McGinnis is here. And Karen, welcome to you.
Yes, thank you for having me. This is a pleasure.
Karen and I just met, I think, this past year, but she has a strong interest in historic preservation as well, and is a native of Brandon.
Yes, that's right. So yeah, I've lived there, a multi-generational Hillsborough native, but born and raised in Brandon. My parents moved there in this early 70s to raise me and my sister in the country.
Cool.
Obviously, Brandon is known now as traffic and Chuck E. Cheese.
Were you riding some horses back then?
No, but I was scooting along Highway 60. I think it was 2-lane maybe at that time.
2-lane.
Lakewood was a stop sign.
Yeah, they had a stop sign and one flashing
goodness.
traffic light.
Yeah.
You know, that side of the county has grown so much. Mark, maybe you have some numbers in your head, but I would guess when you were growing up out there, there's probably just one high school, Brandon High.
Yeah, it was,
And maybe, a couple 20, 30,000 people or something like that, Mark.
Yeah, around that time, Brandon High was the only high school that was on triple sessions as people started moving in there, and the population was about 80,000 at that time.
And then of course it grew and it spread, and you got Valrico and all the other little sub communities surrounding Brandon. And I remember, Mark, when they talked about that area seceding.
Yes.
Right? Were you part of the secession movement?
I was head of the incorporation movement. As a matter of fact, cost me politically because a lot of people didn't want to do it. Now they're going, how come we didn't do it? I said, I don't know. I tried.
And now, if it's seceded now, it would probably be one of the largest cities in the state, right?
We had calculated that if Brandon was a city, it would be the fourth largest city in the state of Florida.
Yeah, right behind Tampa.
Yep.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And what's so sad is because it is unincorporated, all of our historic buildings, they just haven't had any rights over the years, and a lot of our history has been removed as a result of that.
Yeah.
Very sad.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think the County Commission has some programs, and we can talk about that a little bit. They don't have the teeth that the city gives to its historic preservation, like in Hyde Park,
right.
Seminole Heights, et cetera.
Yep.
But, we all share one issue in common in regard to historic preservation. And, did I see the phone come in? Yeah, let's see what David has to say on this topic generally. Maybe he's a branding guy. I don't know. Hold on a second. Good morning, David. John Dingfelder. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing good. Yeah, thank you. When you mentioned historic preservation, I was just thinking about Seminole Heights and how there's kind of an architectural overlay for old Seminole Heights. But if you cross Florida Avenue, there's not that overlay and the protection. So you get just these really ugly houses, and that's true of Tampa Heights too. So I was wondering if there's an option or a possibility to get more of those overlays in the city of Tampa.
I would say there's always a possibility. What I would do is go down and bend the ear of one of your city council members, like Lynn Hertak, who is a Seminole Heights resident, if you're thinking about that area. And then, if she or one of the other council members could champion that and make it a motion to city council. And what they have to do is they actually added a new area down in Hyde Park recently. They added about 10 or 15 blocks down in a certain little section of Hyde Park that had been missed. And they added that. And that's been the first addition like that in many, many years. So, but first they have to study it, and it takes like 4 or 5 years of process. Mark. Yeah,
let me also mention that Linda Salcino, a former city council person, has started a group that meets, ironically, this next Monday at noon at the Saunders Library. It's a historic roundtable in which a lot of the preservation people get together. I've been to the meetings. It's very interesting, and they talk about some of these areas. So it's open to the public. It's at noon on Monday at the Saunders Library.
Is that the one on Nebraska?
Yeah, on Nebraska, 1515, I think.
Well, I'm glad you told me. I did not know about that. I'm going to fuss at Linda for not inviting me.
Those blocky houses you're seeing in like Tampa Heights, they look like a Borg ship, from Star Trek, and they're just so ugly. It's like, everybody's getting assimilated, I think,
Yeah, Tampa, you're absolutely right. Parts of Tampa Heights are strictly protected. I think that's the east side of Florida Avenue. And then when you jump over to the west side closer to Armature, I think that's what you're sort of describing, right, David?
And that's true on Seminole Heights. The west side of Florida is not protected, but the east side is. So, yeah, I find that interesting. It's kind of, I just find it weird.
Yeah. trying to outline the history of that and why they picked one side and the other, not the other, and we'd have to have somebody on from the city to help us with that. But David, we appreciate the call.
Thank you.
Take care. So anyway, what I was starting to say before was what we all have in common is we serve on the board of what's called the Timberly Trust. And we're all volunteers, so I don't feel any conflict here talking about it. But the Timberly Trust, Mark, I'll let you describe it since you are our chairman.
Sure. So Julia Mosley, who was born on the property, which was, by the way, the Mosley homestead was built in 1886. She was born, lived to 102 years old.
She was born in, 21? Or?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And then her desire was to keep the property preserved, so she went to national, state, and local historic boards to get it preserved. And then she set up in 1992 the Timberly Trust. And the idea was to maintain the property and keep it in its historic use and not to have it developed. We've been offered, $15 million for the property. It's 15 acres on 10 Mile Lake in Brandon, and thousands of people go by it every day. I have no idea it's there.
Yeah. And going back to the 1880s, and Mark, you brought the book
Yes.
that Julia wrote with...
She wrote it with Betty Crislip.
Betty Crislip, right. But anyway, they wrote the book based upon the notes of Julia's grandmother.
That's
and
right.
Julia's grandmother was also named Julia, which is a little confusing. They have different middle names. But back in the 1880s, the first Julia, I'll call her, moved down here from
Elgin, Illinois.
Illinois.
It was the Elgin Watch Company family.
Right. And the first Julia's husband was a very, very well-known, successful watch engineer, pocket watch. And so back in the day, apparently pocket watches were just huge. And this was the thing, I think, in the late 1880s. And if you had a little bit of wealth, you got a really nice pocket watch. But it was also a period of time when even the average person could buy a pocket watch. And so these watch companies were growing like crazy. And this gentleman, Mr. Mosley, had a brilliant mind and had dozens and dozens of patents to make watches. Anyway, he had some bad health, and he decided that he wanted to pick up and move his family from Illinois, from up north, and come down to the Brandon area. Now, what's that connection that brought him actually to Brandon?
Yes, I'll tell you. So what happened was there was he had a friend, Dr. Knapp, that lived in the Limona area. He had a lime farm. And
Limona being
Limona being right there adjacent to Brandon. So at the same time, Elgin Watch Company was looking for a place for their employees to have a winter home and a retirement area, and they surrounded the Limona area.
Kind of like the forerunner of Sun City.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the original name of the area was called New Hope. That's where it's now called Brandon. And it was all part, and it was back in the 1880s. It was, I think we had 430 people living there, so it was a huge
across the entire swath of Brandon.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the family moves down. The father, what was his name?
Daniel. Daniel?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, the father, since he was busy in Massachusetts and Illinois with these watch companies, he kind of came and went. I think the trains were running at that period of time.
Yes.
But he left his wife there, and then she had a child right there on the property. But what's really fascinating in the book to me is she was there with a couple of older children, and then the baby and that sort of thing. And they're living in a cabin that used to be, I think, the New Hope Church.
That's exactly right.
And they had converted the church into their own little cabin, and they were fixing it up.
That was in 1882.
And sure enough, there was a fire. and she grabbed what she could. She grabbed her, I think her papers, some of her papers, the old family papers. She obviously grabbed the children, and they went scampering out of there, and the whole thing burned down. And there, her husband was not even around. He was 1,000 miles away up in Illinois. But she writes about this in such a firsthand, graphic way. And by the way, if you want to buy that book, I think it's for sale at the History Center.
Yeah, we've got it for sale at the History Center, yes.
And you probably can get it.
It's called Come to My Sunland.
Come to My Sunland, and it's by Julia Mosley and Betty Crislip.
Right.
Just beautiful stories. It really brings you into what life was like and how hard life was, back in the 1880s.
So one of the things that I always enjoyed about, the history of the area is she writes about the fact that they had, they lived on 10 Mile Lake. And by the way, it was called 10 Mile Lake because it was 10 miles from Fort Brooke where the soldiers had their encampment. So the soldiers would go from Fort Brooke to the other forts in the state.
Fort Meade, I think, out in Bartow.
Exactly. And so what they would do is they would stop there. They'd have some water from a well. It was a very pristine well.
They said it was the best well in the area.
In the whole area. And they would stop and visit, and they'd come in covered wagons, and it was an old Seminole Indian trail back in the 1800s.
Yeah, can you imagine what it must have been like? And it tracked, clearly was right there at the predecessor of Highway 60.
That's exactly right.
So it was probably 15 feet wide dirt trail.
Not only dirt, and when it would rain, they would have these huge mud areas. They'd have to, slosh through the mud and with oxen-drawn carriages.
Yeah. So, Karen, have you read the book or looked through the book?
Oh, yeah.
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 And what was your impression of it, especially as a woman? And, did you get that feeling of the hardship that the first Julia, felt through that period?
Yeah, absolutely. And to go on that property now that still sits there, it really is like walking back into the 1800s in good old-fashioned Florida. You've got the palms and all the trees and stuff. So to think that she was living there in those conditions with no air conditioning, oh my goodness, and having those children and just the house catching fire and her managing that, especially they came from a little bit of wealth. So when they came here, it was really like a motley crew of people that were around her.
Right, and wealth and education.
Education, very much so. And, she makes note of some of the book talks about some of the crackers in the area and the quality of people. And so coming from that stature to here in Florida, it speaks very profound of her and her skill sets and ability to thrive here and do some of the things that she did here.
Yeah.
With very little to work
There
on.
are some Yankees out there that still bemoan the fact that there's too many crackers in Florida, but we won't go there.
I was going to make the point that their family were abolitionists living in the South, at that time. And we were just, coming out of the Civil War, and it was kind of different. They were very much abolitionists and believed in, a cross of people in society.
And there's been research done on that, on the Mosley family up there, in Illinois, and I think it was southern Illinois, which was, right next to, I don't know that geography very well, but anyway, it wasn't far from some border states,
right?
And therefore, there was a lot of controversy in that regard. But of course, that was the 1860s. Now we're up into the 1880s. They moved down here. They're sort of settling in. They had the fire. And instead of just going back and giving up, Julia, number one, just digs in even harder and builds the house that is still there today.
So neat.
Piece by piece, that you can when you look at the house, you can get a sense that, this was the main house, I think they sort of built the kitchen area first.
I think that's what they started with.
Which makes sense,
And then they built the nest, which is the main house later.
Right. Yeah. And they had an unusual way of, she was, Julia, what was it, Julia Daniels?
Julia Daniels was the grandmother, and Julia Winfred is the granddaughter.
So Julia Daniels Mosley, Julia 1, not only was she well educated, but she had a very, I would say, artistic and poetic way of life and living. And one of the things that she did was she named all of these buildings, whether or not it was an outbuilding or whatever, she gave them these interesting names, like the main house was the Nest.
Right.
And then, so what was
The bathhouse was the Deluge, where they'd have the a big water tub.
Right, the Deluge, yeah, they just dumped water on their heads and called it a shower.
Yeah. The Owl's Nest.
Yeah, the Owl's Nest.
Owl's Nest. And
I can't remember them all, but they are charted out on the different names.
And our Julia, what's her middle name?
Her Winifred is.
Julia Winifred. Our Julia continued all of that. And like you said, Karen, when you go to the property, you turn in, and you drive down the lane, and you feel like you're going back in time.
Especially off of busy Highway 60. You just take a real sharp, quick right-hand turn, and then all of a sudden you're in 1880.
Yeah. And not only, the house was preserved, the barn, which we think was probably built more like in the probably World War II era, that sort of thing. The barn's sort of hang.
We found Ted Denham, who's on our board. We were out there one day, and we found some old license plates that were kind of in the ground. They were in 1938.
There you go.
License plates. So at some point, there was actually vehicles back there in the barn, at least in the 30s.
Yeah. Julia had an uncle who a lot of the family sort of came and went. She had an aunt, Frindy, who we think raised Julia. That's a whole nother story, but Frindy, we think, raised Julia. And, and by the way, not only educated, but a musical family.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Frindy, we believe, was a very, very talented pianist. And our Julia Winifred, was not only a very talented pianist, and she went up to, what's the school in Atlanta?
Agnes Scott.
For her college degree.
And other than that, she lived on the property her whole life.
Yeah.
And then there was Carl Mosley, the artist.
And I was going to talk about Carl. Julia taught. That's how she supported herself over the years.
And she's still in the property. There's still two grand pianos.
Two grand pianos right there in the living room of the Nest.
Yeah.
And when you and I met her, she was very, very active in not only giving piano lessons, but in the whole piano community of the Tampa Bay area.
And she was also very, very entrenched in making sure that we preserve things, like the canopy of oak trees on Lakewood Drive, and at the Limona Cemetery, she helped get that plaque there, and this is very important to her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the Limona area, Uncle Carl, Uncle Carl was a phenomenal artist, and actually moved to New York, I think during the 1920s before the crash, and was very successful illustrator. He illustrated numerous books, which at the time was, that was a big deal. They, instead of like these days you buy a book, there's no illustrations in it or anything like that. Back then, they illustrated every chapter, about what it was about. And he illustrated a lot of, pretty famous books. He illustrated magazines for, Harper's and all the old magazines.
And he also did prints that were available.
He illustrated The Scrub down here off of Nebraska.
Yep. Mm-hmm. We think that those prints. So then the Depression came for Uncle Carl, and I think he moved back to Tampa because times were tough in New York, but he was still painting. And we think that he got commissioned by the WPA, by Roosevelt's Works Progress Administration, because the WPA not only went around building buildings and stuff like that, but they also gave jobs to artists. They gave jobs to poets to try and keep culture alive, during the Depression. And we believe that Uncle Carl got commissioned to draw some of the local, the way people were living in this local community. And then what you made reference to, Karen, is one of our favorite drawings. He did a couple of them, was The Scrub, which is here in Tampa. And he seemed to like to hang out in the African American community a bit, and he did some really neat, almost cartoonish paintings and drawings of the scrub. And I think that the Tampa community would be very interested in those.
And we've got copies of prints of some of this stuff. I think we've been trying to research to see if we can find some originals, but we understand they were bought at some very high prices at the time. But we do have many of the prints of copies of what he did also.
And the prints are good quality. We're going to try and figure out, I think, a way to sell those.
That would be great.
To raise money for the Mosley property and the nonprofit, which we'll get into in a few minutes. The other print that comes to mind that I love is the Limona train station. Which is right up at the end of what's your street over there?
Victoria?
No, it's Limona Drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's the same track, right? But it was, for all intents and purposes, it was probably like the Brandon train stop.
Yeah.
And we actually have the sign on the property. The original sign was there.
Somehow or another, we lucked into saving the original sign, the Limona Station railroad sign, and we'll figure out a way to use that and preserve that. So Mark, jump forward. We've been talking about the 1880s, the 1920s, and by the way, join the conversation. We're at WMNF. This is Down and Dirty. We're here talking to Mark Proctor and Karen McGinnis about historic Brandon, specifically the Mosley property in Brandon and the Timberley Trust. If you want to join the conversation about historic preservation or anything closely related, 813-239-9663. So, Mark, you met Julia before I did.
Yeah, I met her. I was president of the Brandon Chamber at the time, and she was concerned about Lakewood Drive, which had a canopy of oak trees, and she said, the MPO is going to tear down all those oak trees to widen Lakewood. What do you think? I said, no, we need to stop it. Long story short.
And you also live nearby there.
Yeah, and I live right off of Lakewood myself. So we got a bunch of people that put yellow ribbons around the oak trees. We went to the MPO, and it was taken off of the planning for forever. And
did you and Julia physically go down there and?
Oh yeah.
Describe Julia to our listeners.
She was really kind of an outdoors type of person. She'd wear Indian moccasins, and she was very.
I used to see her in overalls.
Yeah,
and stuff
overalls
like that.
and that type of thing. And just she actually came to my house a few times. And then the one day I got the privilege.
I never saw Julia driving. So I guess she drove at that time.
She must have drove. Yeah, she had to drive because she came to. She'd been to my house, and then one day she invited me to her house, which was really. Such a pleasure to get the private tour, back in the 90s, that she took me around personally and showed me where she lived and all that. And that was when she was very active. And at that time, she said...
And she's already in her 70s at that point.
And she said, we're on the National Historic Registry in the state. We'd like to get local designation. So she asked me if I'd go down, and it was interesting. We found the documents. I was one of three people. It was Betty Crislip, her, and myself that spoke to the Historic Resources Review Board to get that. We were one of the first properties designated in Hillsborough County.
You were the first property.
Exactly.
And I've seen this certificate, and I think Ed Taranchik was chair of the county commission because it actually had to go to the county commission for ratification. For in that process, and Karen, I don't know if you've heard this. You talked about farming and that sort of thing out in Brandon, but when I met Julia a few years later, she was raising cows, and steers, and that sort of thing, and she somebody told me she was very into holistic and organic. Everything was organic. And
she never took, as far as I know, I talked to her nurses in her later years, she never took any pharmaceutical drugs. She only took, holistic type medicine and health foods. And
she lived to be 101 as a result.
Exactly. Yeah. So something to be said for that.
And she raised her cows that way and her steers that way, and then she sold them to people who specifically wanted organic beef, which back then
it was very unusual.
Unusual, yeah. And I've talked to somebody who was I think, they got together and said, okay, I'll buy a quarter of that steer. And and stick it in the freezer. Somebody cut it up and stick it in the freezer. And the other reason I think she did that, especially before she got the historic designation,
she got the agricultural greenbelt zoning.
Exactly.
Right, for the tax purposes.
Right. But in her case, it wasn't a scam. Some people scam the system, but in her case, she was raising those cows, and I remember she had at least a half dozen, I think, and she did it by herself, and she was a peanut of a lady too.
Oh yeah.
If she topped 100 pounds, I'd be surprised. Wow. So, but she used to get out of here, go, get out. She'd fuss at those cows, just like she'd fuss at us, right, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing she did with both John and myself is fight the neighbors. The encroachment of at one side there was a car dealership, the other side a furniture store, and she was constantly fighting the encroachment of those, and that's how John and I both got to know her in terms of trying to preserve her property the best we could.
And she had been offered millions and millions and millions of dollars right there on that prime area of 60 in Lakewood.
Always.
Yeah.
And having taken over as trustees, we still get those offers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I tell people, no, we can't sell it. We don't want to sell it.
I like to dangle them along a little bit and say, okay, how much?
It's so magical over there. No dollar amount can take it that over.
Skip, did you say we had an email or something?
There is a text message from a gentleman said, I just tuned in and live in the improvement area. Where was the Lamona Railroad Station located?
Limona Drive and
kind of near Victoria.
Just north or just south of Victoria.
Yeah.
South or north of Victoria?
North of Victoria.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. See if you can Google it up and maybe dig around. You can find some artifacts out there. Yeah. And who was that who did that?
That came from Nate and Brandon.
And what a lot of people don't know, and I can kind of segue into that, is right there on the corner of Victoria and Moon Avenue is where the Brandon train depot was.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit more about Moseley, and then I want to talk about Brandon history a bit, Karen. We got a grant from the state a while ago, and we used it to put on a new roof and upgrade the electricity and that sort of thing. And we also had some money to pay the university researchers.
Yep.
And our good friend Lori and Travis and their team came on board. Lori being a PhD, and they came on board and did a huge amount of wonderful work. And it's all online. If you Google up University of South Florida Libraries /Moseley, Moseley, you will find the most amazing website that also shows not only two-dimensional pictures, but they did three-dimensional graphics and other types of photos. And they did flyovers with drones, and then they did exhaustive research. Oh, and not only is the house preserved, but Karen, what's in the house?
Oh my goodness, so many artifacts. And it's, you would think it's 2025. Most people would have updated in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s their kitchen, and it's not like that.
The last update looks like it was in the 40s.
Probably in the 40s. The kitchen was. Yeah. So it's just lots of antiquities and furniture and books and magazines from the 1870s,
books and 1880s. Magazines. When the grandmother, Julia, died, that's what it looks like. It looks like when they took her up to Limona Cemetery, they never touched the thing afterwards, which in some ways is sort of strange, but in other ways, isn't it wonderful?
Yeah. So one of the things that you just reminded me of is the interior that Julie Daniels Moseley did an interior taking old palm fronds, and they put that as wallpaper. It was so unique. They painted over that. It's so unique that they took a portion of it to the 1893 World's Fair, and it was in Chicago. It was part of the Florida exhibit. Today, that's still there. That area has never been air conditioned, and it's still there and fascinating to go in there and see this wallpaper made out of palm fronds.
And then painted. Not like a roller brush painting, but actually painted like an artist painted on it, because she was an artist.
And she was so excited to have Daniel come home and see what she had done for him.
Yeah.
You know, look what I did. I decorated the house for you.
Yeah. So Richard wants to join the conversation. Richard from Tampa, good morning.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, good.
My mom and her siblings grew up right there in Brandon,
Nice.
and they knew Julia, and I actually got a chance to visit the property with my aunt, and my mom, a number of years ago. So I did see those paintings.
How old are you now, Rich?
79.
Okay.
So my mom and her siblings and her parents lived on the property north of First Baptist Church from the 20s into the 30s.
Wow.
And, they went to school with Julia. So it is an amazing place. And
Richard, you need to join Karen's group.
He does. He's talking about the first 40 acres of Brandon, north of First Baptist, over there off Moon and all of that.
Karen, tell us about your group. Richard, hang on for a second. We're going to pull you into this.
Yeah, so last year, I ended up acquiring a house over on the original 40 acres of Brandon, which was platted on March 24th of 1890, which is State Road 60 to Victoria to Kings to Parsons, the original 40 acres.
Right.
And the house that I bought was in disrepair, and no one really knew anything about it. It was about to go to the steps of the Hillsborough County auction. I stopped it the night before it went to the auction block. And anyhow, we've been restoring this beautiful, almost 3,000 square foot historic craftsman home.
Wonderful home.
As a result of that, I started doing research, trying to find information on it. And what I stumbled upon was there was a lot of Brandon natives that had a lot of miscellaneous information, but there was no platform. There was no historical society. There was nothing that I could go to and look through paperwork and ask questions and all of that.
Who were the owners of your house?
So the owner of my house, the person who built my house, was Perry Hughes Varn. So prior to Victoria Brandon marrying John Brandon, she was married to Josiah Varn, who died in the Civil War in 1858, I think it was, and left her widowed with two very small children, Annie and William. Wow. So William ultimately had a child, Perry Varn, in the late 1800s, who built my home in 1919. So a lot of really deep roots in history that hasn't been saved or preserved as a result of us not having any sort of historical preservation.
So his stepdad was Brandon.
Was John Brandon.
How about that?
That's right.
And I think there's still some Varns around out there.
There is, yeah. Perry ultimately went over towards Plant City and bought 1,000 acres, I think, and there's a Varn Drive, Varn Road over there. And
right.
Tell me about the organization.
Yeah, so real quick, Richard. So as a result of that, I saw a lack, and I said, we've got to do something. There is still stuff left to preserve here in Brandon, so we started the
stories.
And the stories.
Yeah.
So we started an organization. It's called Preserving Brandon. It was very organic. It was very community driven. We're in the premature stages of it because we have to preserve what we have left. So the fourth Sunday of every month at the Women's Junior Club on Moon Avenue at 2 p.m., we host our monthly Preserving Brandon meeting, and we would love to have you. Actually, we're having one this Sunday, 2 p.m.
And this is the Brandon Women's Center, right?
It is, yep.
My grandfather built that.
I love that. You have to come there. Yeah,
Martin Woldhagen. He was a Norwegian immigrant, and they moved here in the 20s, and then at the end of World War II, they moved out to San Antonio, Texas. But he built that.
Wow.
He actually built two houses on that property north of the Brandon First Baptist Church. They're gone now, but he built two houses. One was a bigger house that he had with his family. The other house was a smaller house that he rented out. And when the McLeans moved to Brandon to be the principal of school, he gave them the bigger house and moved the family into the smaller house. And this was 7 people in one small house. So,
Richard, are you able to get out to that Sunday meeting? Is this what this Sunday?
This Sunday, 2 p.m.
What time?
2 p.m. this Sunday.
It's fascinating because you'll meet a lot of the people. Their last names are fascinating because there's streets named after them.
Yeah. And if you
I didn't grow up in Brandon. I grew up in Seminole Heights. So and they moved away from Brandon in the late 30s. My grandfather.
Yeah, but you've got this irreplaceable knowledge of that history that
can be documented.
that we need to document, and we need to.
Well, I can't document it paper-wise. It's just it's oral.
Yeah.
No, somebody.
We can help you with that. So preservingbrandon at yahoo.com. Preservingbrandon at yahoo.com. If anyone wants to get in touch with that organization, you can email me. Preservingbrandon at Yahoo.
I would like the fact. I don't think it's ever been noted that. In fact, I think that someone said that. Somebody else, but I know as a fact, my grandfather built that with the help of one of my uncles. So
that is so cool.
Not that I can prove it. So it's my word against somebody else I get at this point. But anyway, yeah. So I go by there and visit every now and then, just reminisce. Say, well, my grandfather built that.
Yeah. And those are the things that we're trying to preserve still. A lot of that 40 acres. There was so many historic buildings that they've torn down and turned into parking
they knew
lots.
all those family, the King's family and all that, because they were all in the Falkenbergs. They all were in that, they had kids in the same age range as my aunts and uncles and my mom. So,
oh, that's awesome. Richard, we appreciate you calling and
hopefully we'll see you Sunday.
Y'all take care.
Yeah, I hope you stay plugged in and let's preserve that oral history. We've got Natalie joining us from Brandon. And good morning, Natalie.
Good morning. This is a wonderful show. I'm gonna have to go online and listen to it in its entirety. So my question is for the woman who bought the home and is preserving it.
This is Karen McGinnis.
Yes. Hi, Natalie.
Yes, Karen. Hi. So I live in the area, and I know the home that you're talking about is just north of First Baptist of Brandon and McLean Middle School. Do you plan to live there? Will it be open to the public to come in?
We are. We're going to hang our hats there. We're going to live there, and I'm trying to get my husband to turn it into a museum, and he says, no, we're going to live there. So, we don't know.
I think there's even a pool.
There's a pool. There's a pool on that little piece of land that was covered.
But you know what? I know Karen, and I'm sure that at some point during the year, she will open it to the public and let everybody enjoy that.
Absolutely. Yeah, because we should be finished hopefully in the next 6 weeks with everything. Say that again, Natalie.
I said thank you for buying it and restoring it. It looks beautiful from the outside.
Yes, you are very welcome. Well, thank you for loving it.
As you know, there have been other properties in that general area that we wanted to save that got demolished, unfortunately.
And we're working towards preserving, getting that 40 acres officially preserved as a historic area. I know the Brandon Rotary Club is going to be putting back up the historical marker that was taken down in the 90s. So a lot of good things are happening.
Good.
Thank you so much.
It's
yes,
so
thanks, Natalie.
Thanks, Natalie. So where were we, Mark? So the group came in from the university. They put together this amazing website. Mark, do we have a website yet for Timberlea?
It's associated. We have a Facebook, but it's associated with the University of South Florida. If you go on there, you link up to them. You can,
and they can get in touch with the board.
Absolutely,
we are a not-for-profit,
and we have been working with the Hillsborough County government, with the Tampa History Center, and with the University of South Florida in kind of collaborating and kind of putting this together. But we're still looking for money, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're not allowed to talk about that too much on MNF, but anyway, folks can find out more. They can give me a call here at the station and get the message to me, and I'll plug you into Mark and the rest of the board.
Absolutely.
We're always looking for volunteers and that sort of thing. We've got about 10 minutes left. I wanted to talk about a little bit more about Brandon history. Generally, Karen, was McGinnis your birth name, or what was your family?
McGinnis. So my maiden name is Waters, which I have recently found out by doing all of this, talking with genealogists, that Waters Avenue are some of my relatives.
Wow.
I feel so fancy.
Very cool.
So McGinnis was a married name, and then I just got married again in February, so now I'm Vaughn. So I have multiple last names, but ultimately we'll transition into Karen Vaughn. So I've lived out in Brandon pretty much, I was born there, and I've gone through I've lived in different parts of Hillsborough County, but last year when I acquired the house in Brandon, I've decided to put my house in Thonotosassa on the market. And
but you're compared to Mark and me, you're a relatively young person.
Yeah.
I am almost 50. Yes, I guess that's young. I don't know.
Compared to us, yeah.
Compared to us.
So what intrigues you? What interests you about history? So many people in their 40s could care less, and they just want to go hang out at new stuff.
Yeah, I'm just a good steward of history. I can remember as a young kid collecting old money and jacking the boxes and weird things. So I just think it's there's something sentimental about it. When you see a commercial that throws you back to your childhood, you can't help but feeling warm and fuzzy. And it's just something with history. I love it. So
and don't you think it, especially in a place like Brandon, don't you think it's so important to find something that makes it different? Makes it different than the next town down the road and the next town down the road that, like I said earlier, is just a 1990s strip center and a McDonald's.
Yes, absolutely. Because there is rich history still left in Brandon. And what a lot of people don't know is that, when John Brandon came here in 1857 from Mississippi, he stayed in Fort Brooke for a little bit of time, but then he moved to Seffner.
Because the Indians were hot. Back then.
Yeah. Really, they were.
Yeah.
And then he went to Seffner for about a year, which Seffner was a very booming town prior to Brandon. And then moved back to Brandon.
What was going on in Seffner? I wondered. Made it
the
booming.
Railroad track. That went down through Plant City.
Which is still there. Yeah.
Okay, the Plant City track.
Yes, so they had the Seffner train depot and then Lena Avenue, which before Seffner was even called Seffner. I forget the gentleman's name. He had a daughter named Lena, which it was the town of Lena, he named it. Oh. And then Lena Avenue runs through the historic part of Seffner now. So a lot of rich history, still left. And we want to be able to preserve that for the generations to come. In fact, they're going to be building a new Hillsborough County Library in Brandon.
Oh.
And we've collaborated with them to get a little section of Preserving Brandon stationed at the new library there.
Nice. And I give kudos. Plant City, I think, has done a very nice job, which is actually the birthplace of my father, Simon, 1929. But Plant City's done a nice job of preserving their downtown, just preserving their history and look at it from a tourist perspective.
And I'd like to touch
you get
on
a
that,
sense
too.
like Dade City, Plant City, they get tourism just because it's like I say, it's different. It attracts people who want to see what was Florida like in the booming 20s.
So Plant City, if you take a look at Plant City, you'll see a lot of the older buildings still established there. So the challenge with Brandon was that Brandon was Moon and Victoria Avenue. That's where the train depot was. That's where the general store was. That's where the post office was, the Varn Packing House. So just that little area.
There was a little sort of downtownish.
It was downtown before the hustle and bustle of New Hope Road, which was a dirt road at that time because there was no vehicles. In the 1880s and 1890s, it was the train was the main part of transportation. So that's where the Brandon Depot was, but it wasn't a big town back then like Plant City. It didn't have all the buildings. And then the hurricane of 1921 really came through and took down a lot of those buildings. And then in the 40s, State Road 60 started becoming a thing. And then everyone kind of forgot where the original downtown Brandon was. And, even the piece of property that sits there now, there's a family that's trying to build some apartments on that very sacred piece of land. And we're like, it would be much better to turn that into a park and, have a representation of what original Brandon truly was.
Yeah. So, our goal, Julia's goal, was to preserve the property and on a very limited basis. And by the way, folks, even if you've figured out where this property is, you can't just come walking on it.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got a security guard there and some security dogs and that sort of thing and cameras and stuff. So anyway, I'm sure M&F listeners would not do that, but
also, it is, arrangements could be made to look at it.
And that's where I was going.
And we do tours and stuff.
That's where I was going. And Mark, can we give your email address if folks want to reach out to you for any reason to help the trust or to come see the property?
Give me a phone number. You can text me.
Okay, if you want to do that.
813-451-8885. 451-8780. Just text me, and then we can follow up on it.
All right, we have a caller, and I'm just going to take it without a name. Caller, can you hear me? Are you there? Are you gone? You're gone. Okay. Well, I don't know if I dropped you. If I did, call back. But anyway, so what does the future, bring for the property, for the Mosley property, the Timberley Trust? Like I said, Julia's goal was to preserve the property. Our goal is what, Mark?
Yeah, our job is to preserve it and to also allow the public in limited amounts because we can't just open it up to the public to do it. One of the things we have coming up is kind of an awareness picnic that we're going to have on Labor Day at the Winthrop Barn just to kind of make some awareness of the property, and then
we'll have photos
and pictures and that type of thing.
Labor and legacy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Winthrop being just a little bit to the south of Brandon,
and at the old Hobbs Dairy, it's the original barn, and then they've dedicated that or allowing us to have a little. It's a family picnic, old-fashioned family picnic, with fried chicken and that type of thing.
So we're going to have, I think you said we're going to limit it to about 300 seats.
People, about 300 people. We're one of our board members, Tad Denham, is going to have old music, from the 1800s to the different periods of time. So it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and they can find out more on that. They can give you a call. What was the number again?
813-451-8780. And again, it's best to text me because I may not answer the phone. I mean, I could.
You're good on the text.
But text,
you and I text a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
But we have a very important responsibility to preserve the home. We've been working, like I said, with the state and the county to get funding. To just keeping an old home up like that is really something. Speaking of the home. Like Karen said before, these were not poor people moving down from Illinois. These were, I don't know if they were super rich, but they were comfortable. They were probably upper middle class for that day, and so they built a nice solid house, and the vernacular that we've been told is that it's called a double dog trot.
Yeah.
I think a double dog trot house because there's no air conditioning, but instead of air conditioning, there are these big giant porches. And the porches actually crisscross each other.
Right.
And traditionally, if you had one porch, it was called a dog trot. This one is a double dog trot because it's got two porches that cross and are perpendicular to each other, creating a nice breeze no matter what direction the wind is coming.
No matter what day of the year.
And well, I'll give you an example. We had a board meeting this past week. It was 92.
At noon.
It was 92 degrees out, and we were very comfortable.
Yeah. So, but anyway, the house is amazing. Go online to USF's library and then Google up Mosley, Mosley, Mosley Homestead.
And also on Facebook. If you have Facebook, you can go on there and have
and if you want to reach out to us to get involved, reach out to us on Facebook. And Mark, you and I do need to get younger people like Karen and others involved. Because we have to pass this legacy on.
That's it.
Julia had it registered with the national, state, and local thing, and she created the trust. And legally, it's going to be protected. But if there's not board members, volunteers, and contributors out there to keep it going, who knows what would happen? So so that's just.
Well, this is a great opportunity
important.
to kind of. Again, the exposure we think is important to let people know it's out there, and when we pick up volunteers along the way.
Yeah. So to recap, you've been listening to Down and Dirty. We've had Mark Proctor and Karen McGinnis talking about the Mosley Homestead, the Timberley Trust, Brandon history, and I've enjoyed it tremendously. Some of my fondest memories are Julia Mosley. My first time out there, Mark, I took my children, and they were, 5 and 11 years old, and my daughter was My daughter was a piano player, and she sat down with Julia, and they played piano together. And, it's just great memories, and we're going to keep those memories going, keep them alive.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you, John, for allowing us to talk about it.
Yeah. Skip, are we about there?
We are just about out, about 20 seconds to go. So,
all right. Well, I appreciate you, Irene. Thank you for all you do. Thanks for answering the phone. Skip, thanks for running the board. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next week. This is John Dingfelder, WMNF.
Tampa.